Hi, my spooky friends. My name is Savannah, and welcome back to my channel. Halloween is officially over. We are coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas. I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for being cool with me taking a break last week. We've had some personal family issues, and along with the election, my anxiety medicine being out, and a few other things, my anxiety has been through the roof. I needed a little bit of a break, just not from YouTube, but literally took 4 or 5 days off of school, went up to Tuscaloosa to visit some of my friends, break from everything. So thank you guys for being patient with me. I am back though. I'm personally feeling better. If you saw my tweet on Twitter, you'll know that I didn't have my anxiety medicine for a good 5 days, but I did get it back. I got my prescription upped a little bit, and I feel so much better. I have also changed things up a little bit. I got some new stuff. I don't know what I'm gonna do with any of it yet. I know I want to put some kind of candle or I don't know, something in here. I'm gonna fill up my wine bottles with black rose petals, I think, and it's a work in progress, but we're getting somewhere. But yeah, I did get some new stuff. I'm very excited about it. I got some lights. I'm also playing with lighting, if you can't tell. Kind of upset you can't really see these in the back changing. Not really crazy about the shadows either, but I like the light. So we're gonna play with it for a little while. We're gonna see what happens. Whatever. Y'all are on this journey with me. So I had a few issues with my hair and my clothes today. I was going for a Barbie look, but it turned out this Bratz doll look. You know what I mean? The Bratz doll meme? Yeah. Which is fine. So today's video, most of us grew up watching or at least knew about it while it was going on. When this case was happening, I remember sitting at the end of the trial, watching this person walk out, and I was sobbing. I was literally 9 years old, first of all, and I turned to my grandmother and I said, if somebody doesn't shoot her as she's walking down these steps, Gramsy, I'm gonna go do it myself. And that tells you anything about my personality when I was 9. Imagine how I am now. But yeah, if you didn't grow up watching this case, buckle up because it is a roller coaster. This case does have a lot of child abuse, abduction, suicide, sexual abuse, and graphic images. I had some graphic images in my last video and didn't put a disclaimer on it. So now I'm going to. So today we are talking about the infamous case of Caylee Anthony and the trial of her mother, Caylee Anthony. I could go on and on about this case for years, and it's going to be very hard for me to edit this case. I know I'm going to go on a lot of rants about Caylee Anthony, but it's fine. We're here, and we're going to be fine. So let's go ahead and get right into the case. Caylee Anthony was a 2-year-old girl who went missing for a whole month before any attempt at finding her was made. The father of Caylee is unknown, but it doesn't really pertain to this story. What does matter is Caylee's mother, Caylee freaking Anthony. Caylee was 19 when she had Caylee, and although she wanted to keep Caylee, she was reluctant to tell anyone about the pregnancy. Her mother actually asked her a few months before she found out if Caylee was pregnant, and she said no, but she was, and she didn't tell her mother until months later when she started showing. I think she was reluctant to tell people about Caylee or tell people she was pregnant because of her party lifestyle. She was very heavily into drinking and drugs and just being a party girl. She was not in a place to be a mother. I'm not in a place to be a mother. This is not anybody's, fault. I'm not saying, like she was a terrible mother, which she was, but not for these reasons. I'm just saying if, I'm 19 and I'm pregnant and I want to keep the kid, you got to change your life around. And she didn't want to do that. But she wanted the kid at the same time. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. So we are going to begin at the beginning of Caylee's life. We're going to start at Caylee's life. We're not going to talk about Casey's childhood or anything like that. She doesn't really deserve it. So, Caylee Marie Anthony was born Tuesday, August 9th in 2005 in Orlando, Florida. She was born to Casey Marie Anthony, with the father being unknown. We know from interview transcripts that Casey told her ex-fiance, Jesse Grund, that the child was his, but when Caylee was born, he demanded having a paternity test done, and when they did this, they figured out that he was not the father. It's unclear if Casey intentionally lied to him about it, but I believe she did, because it seems to me like she was having some type of affair or something like that, and that's why she wanted him to think he was the father, and she also wanted everyone else to think he was the father because it was her fiance. Casey was a known compulsive liar to her parents, and her parents really worried for Caylee because they basically raised Caylee, and Casey was just not fit to be Caylee's parent. Even if she did love her, she just was not fit for this role, and Casey's parents would raise Caylee as basically their own daughter. Casey had a lot of issues dealing with any kind of situation. She often would have one small lie that would just turn into this one big lie, and then when she couldn't get out of it, she would just be like, yep, I lied, sorry, and then nothing would be done about it. She did this through her whole entire life just to get herself out of situations. So a couple of years later, on July 15th, 2008, Casey's mother and Caylee's grandmother, Caylee Anthony, would receive a phone call from a towing company about her car. Now, Casey and Caylee is now 2, they lived with the grandparents for a while because Casey was a single parent and she needed the support and whatnot. She would often use her parents' car, and it kind of became her hand-me-down car, and she would just kind of take it wherever and use it whenever she needed to. So on this specific day, July 15th, 2008, Cindy got a phone call from this towing company saying that the car was in a Jacksonville parking lot completely out of gas and it was being towed. So Casey told her parents she was going on a mini vacation in Jacksonville, Florida, and she would be home soon. But regardless, the car being towed worried Cindy, and she sent George to pick up the car. And whenever George picked up the car, he finds a bunch of Caylee's toys in the car, some of her clothes, Casey's purse, and also a terrible smell coming from the trunk that they would later describe as the smell of death or a decomposing body. Now, I haven't never smelled the smell of a decomposing body or of death or anything, but you can look up interviews with cops and stuff like that, and they say that the smell is just unbearable and nothing you have ever smelled before. So the day after George goes to pick up the car from the towing company, Cindy finds out that Casey was not on vacation and had actually just been staying with her boyfriend at the time. Just kind of trying to get away, apparently, and taking a break from life and, going out to party because her life as a stay-at-home mom who doesn't have to work and her parents take care of her is so difficult, right? So Cindy also takes note that Caylee is not with Casey whenever Casey comes home, and she thinks about how they haven't seen Caylee since a month before on June 16th. So after Cindy realizes that Caylee has not been seen in a month, Casey tells her mother that Caylee is with a nanny called Zenaida Gonzalez, and also known as Zanny or Zanny the nanny. She tells her mother that Zanny, I'm just going to call her Zanny, she tells her mother that Caylee has been kidnapped by Zanny and that Casey has not seen Caylee in over 30 days. So Caylee has been missing for a whole month, and Casey has been at her boyfriend's house and hasn't told anybody about Caylee's disappearance or abduction. So Caylee's been gone for, a month, and she hasn't done anything about it. So before Cindy finds out that Caylee is missing, she calls the police on Casey for stealing her car, and she does this because she wants to report the smell in the trunk. And if I can find the audio, I will also put the audio for the phone call right here.
911, what's your emergency? I called a little bit ago, the deputy sheriff saying I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
The babysitter took her a month ago that my daughter's been looking for. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. And she just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee, Caylee Anthony.
So yeah, she goes on to say that the trunk smells like someone put a damn body in the back of it, and that her daughter was the last one to have the car, etc. And so police get sent out to the house, and they walk into a completely chaotic scene. So Casey and Cindy are both crying. Casey and Cindy are screaming at each other. George is like wandering about the house. I don't know what he's doing, but he's like trying to talk to the police and calm everybody down. And at this point, police are like, why are you guys talking like this? This is literally just about a towed car. And what police don't know at this point is that Caylee has been missing for 31 days, and this is how they find out. And they're just shocked. They're like, this was about a stolen car incident, and now you're telling us that your granddaughter and daughter has been missing for 31 days and was never reported? So yeah, the police are confused as hell, and so to kind of calm down the situation, they separate the 3 family members and take their statements individually so they can kind of paint a picture of everybody's perspective and kind of what happened. So Casey is arrested initially for child neglect, and Cindy lets the police leave with her in the back of the cop car. Now, during this interview with Casey, down at the station after she gets arrested, she tells police that she never reported Caylee as missing because she was scared that something would happen to Caylee, like Zanny the nanny was going to do something to her. And she also told police that she didn't report it because she was starting her own investigation and thought that she could figure all of this out herself, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But Casey often gets away with saying things like this. Like, no one confronts her about her lies or things that she said or things that, like, don't add up. But they don't say anything to her. So after Casey and Cindy and George all talk while Casey is in custody, something changes because Cindy retracts her statement about the dead body smell in the car. Cindy retracting her statement is important to remember for later theories whenever we talk about what happens and how everything unfolds with Casey and her parents and the abduction of Caylee. I'm really hoping I don't get any of these names like mixed up. I hope I don't say that Caylee did something that Casey did because they're all C's and I get tongue-tied and confused really easily. So anyways, also during Casey's interview, she tells police that she knows where Zanny the nanny's apartment is and that she can take them to it. So police find this apartment and go to the front desk person and figure out that no one named Zenaida Gonzalez has ever lived there, and the apartment has also been vacant for 140 days. There was also no footage of Casey dropping Caylee off in this apartment complex. They looked at surveillance footage from that day and days surrounding that day, and there was no evidence of Casey's car or Caylee or anybody getting out, and there was no like exchange with any kind of nanny. And police are like, so how did you drop Caylee off to this nanny that was here if there's no evidence of you ever being here, and there's no evidence of a Zenaida Gonzalez ever living here, and there was no evidence of any kind of nanny being here, and the apartment you say is hers has been vacant for 140 days. Yeah. After the whole ordeal with the apartment, Casey is still sticking to her story about Zanny the nanny and Caylee being abducted. And she tells police that she confided in two of her coworkers from Universal Studios where she worked that, Caylee had been abducted, and they can vouch for this, and she did tell somebody. And police are like, you don't work at Universal. There's no record of you working there, but okay, all right. So they come up with this, like they hatch kind of this plan of seeing if Casey really does work at Universal, and they're like, all right, well, take us to Universal. Show us where you work. And Casey's like, okay. She puts on her big boy pants, and she's like, all right, let's go. So they show up to Universal, and she goes up to this like front desk clerk, and she's like, my name's Caylee Anthony. I work here. And he's like, okay, there's no record of you in this book anywhere. And she's like, well, this is my supervisor's name, and here's his extension. And she like looks at police, and she's like, I don't know why they can't find it, basically. And the guy's like, yeah, there's no record of you working here, but you can like go on ahead, basically. And so Casey like walks through with the police and walks down this hall, and she turns around and she's like, I don't actually work here. And police are like, yeah, we know. So of course police had already figured out that Casey did not work at Universal, and kind of wanted to see how far she would take it, because of the rumors and like what her parents said about her lying. They wanted to see how far she would go to cover up her employment records and what she did. Anyway, so now that Casey's in this like dead end of her lie, police are like, okay, so confess. Where's Caylee? What did you do to her? You're at the end of your rope here. So come on, just tell us. And Casey's like, nope, Zenaida took her. Still sticking to the story of Zenaida. Like, Zenaida exists or something. And police are like, oh my God, we're never going to get anywhere with this girl. So she gets put in jail or whatever, and she's being held there. And during this time, from July 17th to July 22nd, Casey's car was actually searched, and they found a large stain, which appeared to be like a dark blood stain. They found strands of hair that matched the color of Caylee's hair. And they also had cadaver dogs come sniff the car, and they found scents of Caylee also in the trunk of the car. All of this was found in the trunk. I don't think I just said that. But yeah, so they searched the trunk of the car, found the hair, found the blood stain, and found the scent of Caylee in the trunk. A boot for all of the UK, European, I think Australia also says boot. Is Australia? Yeah. So yeah, the boot of the car, the trunk of the car, the same thing. So before all of this happened, the 31 days that, I'm so sorry if I keep on looking over here. I have a donut sitting in front of me and I really want to eat it, but I'm like kind of in the zone right now, so I'm not going to. Anyway, what is so interesting about the 31 days that Casey didn't report Caylee missing is her behavior. Casey's behavior was erratic. She was partying, she was drinking every night, she was doing drugs every night, going out and doing hot body competitions and going to clubs with random people, meeting new boys while her supposed boyfriend is in his apartment at home, and just all of these crazy things. She also got a new tattoo about the good life tattooed on her shoulder, and she was also going shopping with her friends and like doing absolutely the opposite of what you would be doing if your child was missing. And I'm not saying that no one handles grief in a different way, but I've never seen a person handle grief this way. You do not go out and do wet t-shirt competitions while your 2-year-old daughter has been missing. Casey's bail was set at $500,000, and she was also named a person of interest in Caylee's abduction, I believe on July 22nd through the 27th. So almost a month later, Caylee's 3rd birthday would pass with no new leads to her whereabouts. After about this month of silence, on August 27th, 2008, an air sample of the trunk had confirmed that there was in fact a decomposing body in her trunk. And a few weeks after that, on October 2nd, 2008, this case would change from a suspected child abduction to a suspected murder, naming Casey as the prime suspect. On October 14th, 2008, Casey is actually charged with first-degree murder, and she is also being charged with child neglect, lying to investigators, petty theft, and using a forged check. I believe she actually used 17 forged checks and was charged with all 17 of them. She would also be charged with aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter, and providing false information to law enforcement. She would plead not guilty on all murder and abuse charges. Now, flash forward a couple of months later, while police are gathering other evidence, on December 11th, 2008, a man named Roy Kronk, who was a meter reader, was assigned to read meters near Caylee Anthony's house. He got finished with one meter in a different neighborhood and walked to the next neighborhood, which is where Caylee and her parents lived, and walked down to a wooded area to relieve himself. And this was kind of known for... Good. My room's haunted. It's fine. There were areas around the woods that meter readers kind of knew they could go to use the bathroom without anybody seeing them. And so there were just kind of like known spots. And this is where he went. He went to go to the bathroom, and he looked over and saw a black bag. Looked like a black trash bag. He had his meter stick with him, and so he began to poke the bag and kind of like hit it-ish. And whenever he felt like this hollow kind of flattening look to the bag, he decided to tug at it with the meter stick and pull on it. And when he did this, a human skull rolled out of the trash bag. He later tells the court that when he saw the skull, he initially thought it was a Halloween costume or a Halloween mask, and it was only about a month and a couple of weeks after Halloween, so that's not totally implausible. And so he picked up the skull, or the Halloween mask, the skull, with his meter stick to be sure that it was not a Halloween costume. And whenever he did this, he actually saw that there was duct tape around the mouth of the skull. Kronk obviously contacted the police, and not even a week later, the skull and the remains were found to be that of Caylee Anthony. She had been wrapped in her Winnie the Pooh blanket, stuffed into many garbage bags, and then stuffed into a laundry bag after that, and then thrown into a littery, swampy area. So, even though they had found the body, a cause of death could not be determined because of the amount of decomposition the body had gone through, and due to the swampy area and her body being exposed to all of those elements. So there was no physical evidence on the skeletal remains besides the duct tape, therefore there was no way to determine a cause of death. In January of 2009, Roy Kronk goes public to say that he was in no way involved with Caylee Anthony's death, and he was simply a utility worker who happened to find the skull. There were theories soaring at this time. I mean, about everybody involved in the case, even the police. And there were surprisingly, even after all of this evidence, still people who believed that Casey was not involved and that it was somebody else. After Caylee's body was found, about a month later, police raided a hotel room where they found George Anthony lying on the floor surrounded by empty pill bottles and a lot of alcohol. George had attempted to commit suicide, and he would have been very successful had police not found him and saved him whenever they did. There was also a 5-page suicide note addressed to Cindy and Casey, saying that he just wanted to go be with Caylee and he couldn't handle it anymore. He was found via phone location. Police actually tracked his phone whenever Cindy and a couple of other friends said that they hadn't seen him in a couple of days. And I won't be going any further into the suicide note or the other details of George's attempted suicide. You can look up these things on Google if that is something you're interested in doing, but for privacy reasons, I just don't feel like it's appropriate for me to put it on my channel. On April 18th, as the prosecution and defense are getting ready for trial, the prosecution actually announces that they are going to be pursuing the death penalty against Caylee Anthony for her abuse and murder charges. I had flip-floppy dates on when the trial began. I believe it was May 22nd or May 27th. But either way, the trial began in late May. Although it was based purely on evidence, a lot of this evidence is said to be circumstantial and could not lead detectives to a solid story. There was a lot of what if this happened or what if that happened. So the evidence was considered circumstantial. Throughout the whole entire trial, Casey continues to stick with the story that Zanny the nanny abducted and killed Casey and was trying to pin it on her, basically. But there was never even evidence found that Zanny the nanny existed or anyone named Zanaya Gonzalez was involved in the case. During the trial, Karen Moore, who is a law professor at Florida A&M University, says it is going to be a battle of the experts. They don't have a confession, they don't have eyewitnesses, they don't have direct evidence. They are relying on forensic science that is circumstantial at best. Regardless of the evidence, the trial was very brutal. There was a lot of fighting. The Anthony family was constantly harassed by neighbors and people who would just show up to their house. Tickets were being sold to get into the courtroom. There were fist fighting. There was getting into conflicts and getting into fights with Cindy and George. People were getting in their face and they were basically just saying that they were leeches and that they needed to get off their property. The media covered the case across the whole entire nation, and the whole nation, including my 9-year-old self and my 9-year-old cousins, were entranced. I mean, we were so ready to see this little girl get justice because the evidence against her mother was so strong, even if it was circumstantial, that showed that she did do something, even if we don't know what. It was pretty clear it was her. You can't be here right now. You can't be here right now. This is my Gino Bob. Hello, Gino Bob. Hello. Your breath smells really bad when you leave. Okay, well, I guess he's gonna sit here. Oh, you're not. Will you move? Go sit down. Sit down or lay down. I love you. So I wanted to go over some of the evidence that I mentioned throughout this video, and then also mention some of the evidence that was used in court. So first I wanted to mention the car, and this one is just so simple. I mean, Casey was the one that always used the car. She never told investigators or anybody else that anybody else besides her used the car. There was evidence of a decomposing body in the car, the smell of death in the car. Kaylee's hair strands were found in the trunk of the car, or the boot of the car for my European other half of the world friends. There was just so much evidence found in the trunk of the car that pointed to Caylee being back there dead. Another key piece of evidence is noting that Zanny the nanny never existed. Police never found her. She was not used as a witness in trial. She could not be confirmed to even have seen or even be alive or even be a person. The only evidence of a Zenaida Gonzalez was in, I believe, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and she actually sued Casey for using her name, and it was found that she was not the Zenaida Gonzalez that police were looking for, and that Zenaida Gonzalez did not exist. So one key piece of evidence that I did not mention in the video is that when the duct tape from Caylee's skull was examined, there was actually a heart sticker found on the duct tape. And there were similar stickers that looked like this in Casey's room. And it's unclear if they were analyzed or if they were a match. But either way, the sticker was presented in court, and so I do believe that it was proof that this sticker was in connection from Caylee's and the duct tape found on Caylee's skull to Casey. Going back to the beginning of this case, we need to remember that Cindy, Casey's mother, made that 911 phone call, and you can almost tell in her voice that she felt like something was wrong or that Casey had done something. She mentioned the smell of death coming from the trunk of the car, and ultimately, when she retracted this statement, it makes me feel like she had something to do with what happened to Caylee, or she retracted it right after she went to go visit Casey in jail the first time she got arrested. And I feel like that conversation had something to do with Cindy retracting her statement about the smell of death. And I really think that she just wanted to defend Casey. The assistant state attorney let the jury smell this trash, and they all agreed that it smelled of a decomposing body, something that they had never smelled before, and how bad it was. There was also a shovel found in the home that Casey allegedly borrowed from a neighbor the night before Caylee went missing, and she could not give an explanation for why she borrowed this shovel. Like I said, this case is just all over the place. There is some stuff that I just don't even understand, but I did want to share with you guys everything that I had found and every piece of information I could find on the evidence in the trial. The partying and shopping during Caylee's disappearance was obviously not physical evidence, but it was presented in court, and I think it really shows how little Casey cared. I really think that it shows that even if she didn't have anything to do with Caylee's disappearance, something could have been wrong, and Casey did not give a flying flip. She was enjoying her little mini vacation away from home, not having to deal with Caylee, and she just did not care about her whereabouts whatsoever. It was also brought up in court that the Anthony computer, I believe it was George's computer, was searched, and there were many Google searches involving suspicious activity on the computer, such as chloroform, which is a drug that you put onto a napkin, and that's kind of what people put over victims' faces to make them pass out. It's used quite often. It's not very hard to get, and so a lot of people are wondering, why chloroform was on a Google search. Later in court, Cindy would actually admit to looking up chloroform during this time, but wouldn't tell the court why. But she was not responsible for any of the other Google searches that were made at the same time, which doesn't make any sense. I think that they were just trying to confuse the prosecution and the jury. And obviously, it ends up working. No one knows what happens or why all of these little details of who looked what up matter when they won't help the prosecution or defense or jury understand the reasoning behind looking up these searches. Chloroform is also present in trash and decomposing bodies, and so the defense argued that it was from the trash that was in the trunk. That's why it was being looked up, to see if trash can produce chloroform, which it can, and so the defense used that to their advantage. Other Google searches included chest trauma, internal bleeding, how to make chloroform, neck breaking, and household weapons. The defense attorney, Jose Baez, actually came up with the claim that George was the one who looked up the Google searches. It was also basically proven at that time that Casey was at work when these searches were made. So the defense was saying that it had to have been Cindy or George. I think this really confuses a lot of people, because when you first hear about this case, you're like, oh, Casey did it. And yeah, she probably did, but I think there's a lot of evidence that shows that her parents tried to cover up for her and themselves, and they were also somehow involved. Another thing to mention is how the defense chose to tell Casey's side of the story. Jose Baez actually would end up putting the whole murder on George Anthony, Casey's father. Baez absolutely ripped George to shreds, saying that he molested Casey, that Casey was raped multiple times as a child. He insinuated that Caylee may have even been Casey's or George's child. There were rumors spreading around everywhere that George had done this to Casey and that he killed Caylee. For why? I don't know. There was not a solid piece of reasoning for how his sexual abuse towards his daughter resulted in him killing his granddaughter. The defense basically was just trying to say that George was a terrible person and that he killed Caylee. The defense ended up spinning some kind of story that said that George was babysitting Caylee at one point, and they decided that they were going to go swimming. And so Caylee put on her swimsuit, she went swimming, and they were having a complete blast, but she ended up accidentally drowning because George was not paying attention. They did have a pool in the backyard of their house, and so they went swimming all of the time. It said that Caylee absolutely enjoyed going swimming, and so the defense used this to turn George into some kind of monster, and also said that George wanted to commit suicide because he couldn't bear living with this guilt anymore. So this could all be very true. I mean, it could be exactly what happened, except I really think that if this were to happen, Casey was also involved. I don't think that it would have been accidental. I think that one of them or all of them planned to kill Caylee and decided to spin this randomizing tale of misleading evidence and just things that didn't make sense to try and throw the defense or the prosecution and investigators off. And I think that it worked. Also, something to think about is if this wasn't true and George was not responsible for killing Caylee, how could he defend his daughter and stay on her side after she accused him of sexually abusing her as a child and raping her constantly as she got older? They were on Casey's side through the whole trial, and if my kid sat there and said that I raped them when I didn't, I don't think I could stay. I don't think I could do that. But I'm not a parent, so I really don't understand what it's like, and maybe they just really didn't want to lose their daughter like they lost their granddaughter. So anyway, Casey alleged that George woke her up one morning holding Caylee's dead body, and it was soaking wet. She said this in a later interview, I believe in 2017, when talking to a CNN reporter. She told the reporter, "I took her from him and collapsed on the porch. He was yelling at me, 'Your fault. Couldn't believe you did this.' He left the house saying, Daddy is going to take care of it. I think he held her underwater. Maybe he was doing something to her and tried to cover it up. I don't think it was an accident, and I didn't do it. So there she goes again, trying to blame her father for something that she probably was involved in. And he's letting her do it. And I really just don't understand, like, their whole family dynamic. Like, what the fuck? Like I said, the trial was absolutely brutal. Casey was crying every single day in court. Her parents were constantly breaking down. I truly believe that the parents only stayed on Casey's side for their own sake, and so they would not have to live through losing another child again. I really don't think it was even a conscious choice. I really think that they were just so desperate that their brains kind of went into autopilot, and they were just like, my daughter, save, protect, I'm her parent. And I understand that to a certain extent. I do. Now, throughout the whole trial, Caylee Anthony did not testify, and on July 5th, 2011, 5 men and 7 women deliberated for almost 10 hours, or for over 10 hours and 40 minutes. They came back with a verdict of not guilty on all murder and child abuse accounts. She was found not guilty on first-degree murder charges, aggravated child abuse, and aggravated manslaughter. But she was found guilty of the misdemeanor charge of providing false information to law enforcement and forging bad checks. So she was sentenced to 4 years in prison, but she had already served about 3.5 years in prison, waiting for her trial to end. So she was only in there for about 2 months before she was released in July. So she was released on July 17th, 2011, and I remember watching this. I remember it was so heartbreaking, and everybody was so angry whenever she got released. She had to be protected because there were so many people out there that were planning on killing her. And my 9-year-old brain at the time didn't even comprehend this. Like, I didn't even know what was going on, really. I was just like, wow, this bitch, I hate her. She killed her daughter. And I remember turning to my grandmother and saying something along the lines of, if somebody doesn't kill her or shoot her when she walks down those court or those jail steps, I'm going to have to do it myself, or something like that. 9-year-old me was interesting. I was a little angry bitch, and now I'm a little angry bitch. So anyways, she had to be protected the night that she got released, and there was even like a car switch up at her attorney's office so that we didn't know which car she was in when she left. This was so that the helicopters did not follow her to the secret location where she was going, so she could stay protected and not get murdered that night. But Judge Perry, who was the judge on the case, ordered Anthony to pay authorities nearly $98,000 for the cost of investigating Caylee's death after the Department of Children and Families concluded that Anthony was responsible for Caylee's death. He also ordered her to pay an additional $119,000.22 to police, and this would actually bring the total to around $217,000 that she would have to pay back. Now, in a older CNN interview in June of 2012, Caylee sat down with a CNN interviewer, and it was Piers Morgan. So she sat down with Piers Morgan and said that she didn't kill Caylee, and that she was never a party girl, and that she doesn't drink anymore, and that she's maybe had a handful of beers since she's been on probation, and that the character of her that was out in the media was completely wrong. And I get it. Like, the media sucks. But honey, I've seen the photos. There's evidence. There's so many things that, like, just show that you're a compulsive liar and nothing you say is ever really true. So I don't care if you're on the freaking Oprah show or with Piers Morgan, I don't really believe anything you say, especially because you held so much information from police and are still holding so much information from police and the public. I also really just believe that police were not asking the right questions and let Caylee get away with a lot of dead-end answers and answers that just didn't make any sense. I don't think they really tried hard enough to get answers out of her, and I do think that if they had tried hard enough, she would have cracked. Caylee also told CNN in an exclusive in 2017 that if Caylee were alive today, she would be a, quote, total badass, end quote, and that she had no idea what happened to her daughter during the last hours of her life, and I do believe she lives in West Palm Beach, Florida, working for a private investigator that worked in her defense. The only thing we have really heard from Caylee is that in a Daily Mail interview, I believe it was Daily Mail, and I only say this because I remember it. I didn't research this, but I wanted to mention it. In a interview with Daily Mail, she actually talked about how she was writing a book and making a movie about her experiences, and says she knows it will be extremely controversial, but she feels like she has a story that needs to be told, and she's going to tell it even if no one will listen. Caylee has also talked about being a mom again. Although no one seems to care or say anything or have an opinion on this, her father does. George Anthony expressed his concerns that the thought made him nervous, and that he said, quote, "Knowing now that she could potentially be a mom again, I hope she does better this time around, knowing what she did last time." Now I'm like, knowing what she did last time, what do you mean? I thought you didn't know what happened. So maybe he does know. So between the entire case, there are 3 theories that stood out to me. The first theory is that this is exactly what it looks like, and it was a very straightforward case of Caylee Anthony manipulating police and her parents into believing that she was completely innocent and that she does not know what happened to Caylee, or that her parents were involved and they were just simply covering for Caylee. It seems as though she didn't want Caylee anymore, or she wanted to go out and party one night, so she put chloroform over Caylee's mouth and then duct taped it shut, along with her nose, put a little sticker on the duct tape, put her to sleep basically, left her there to go party, and then Caylee suffocated and she didn't know what to do. After this, the theory goes 2 ways. It's basically if her parents were or were not involved with getting Caylee hidden, disposed of, out of the car, out of the house. I mean, there's just a lot of times that we don't know when the parents could have been involved or weren't. The next theory is obviously that Caylee simply drowned under George's or the grandparents' watch, and they didn't know what to do with the body, so they just left it in the car for a couple of days and let it sit there, and that's why the smell was so bad, but Caylee did know about it. Like I said before, Caylee testifying against her father, basically saying, or not testifying, but in the interview with CNN, basically saying that, her father had showed Caylee this wet dead body of Caylee, and so she didn't know about it, but it wasn't her fault. The last and most kind of unknown theory in this case is that Vasco Thompson was involved. And if you don't know who Vasco Thompson was, or is, I don't know if he's dead, he is a kidnapper from the 1980s, I believe 1988, and he had kidnapped somebody and served time in prison. So Caylee's defense team sought to question the Orlando resident, Vasco Thompson, and ask him about his connections with George Anthony. So Caylee's attorneys claimed that Thompson was contacted or connected to George through his cell phone records, and they had proof of this. They had showed that there were phone calls placed between them, and Thompson responded by telling reporters, quote, "I don't know how they got me involved in all of this mess. I have no idea who George Anthony is," unquote. But the records show that there were 4 calls between George Anthony and Thompson on July 14th, 2008, the day before Caylee was reported missing. And there is no other evidence on that. There is nothing. No further investigation was done on this. And I just don't understand how. How was he not ruled out or further questioned? Why weren't they looking at this guy? Anyways, Casey's out there living her life. She's about to write a book and a movie and whatever. Don't watch it. She gets revenue from that. And all, whatever. Don't buy the book. If you're going to get the book or you want to read the book, go to Barnes & Noble and read it, in the store. You know what I mean? Don't buy it. Just, sit there and read it. Or look it up illegally. That, too. That's probably what I'm going to do, because I'm curious. But just don't buy it from her. Don't purchase it. Don't do anything that isn't illegal. Am I allowed to say that on the internet? Don't do that. Just kidding. Just don't read it or watch it. Don't do anything illegal when looking for this movie or book. Everything else, don't do that. Don't do anything else illegal. Or that. Don't do that either. Anyway, I truly believe that Casey really was 100% involved. She was Caylee's mother. She was irresponsible and was rightfully charged with at least child neglect, which she should have been found guilty of, if not anything else. I just will never understand how the jury declared a not guilty verdict just because there was no story, even though there was evidence, and there was enough evidence to prove that she was somehow involved. Anyways, you guys, let me know what you think of this case. Let me know if y'all remember this case. My camera is on 1%. I know I need to get a second battery. I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please turn on those post notifications, because that little bell lets you know whenever I do post, and that way you will be able to watch it as soon as it comes out, or whenever, at least you'll know it's out whenever it does come out. I do often post it on my Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter, but the little bells really help you guys more than anything. Like I said, I will see you guys next week. Please send me any kind of case you would like for me to cover, and you can do that with the email in the description box, or you can just comment it under this video. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful week. Bye.